Welcome to the Universal Joint. I'm entertainment writer Jim Hill, and my co-host Dustin Fuhs and I are recording this podcast on Saturday, April 21st, 2021. All right, so folks, I don't need to tell you this. We are in 2 steps forward, 1 steps back country. Dustin, up in Canada, when it comes to COVID, you guys are dealing with a resurgence right now that keys off of the variants, right?
We, as of April 8th, we're back into a stay-at-home order in Toronto and Ontario.
Okay.
That was expected to last for only 28 days, but it's going an additional 2 weeks on top of that. So that's at least May 20th that we're going to be staying at home. We're also having a doozy of a vaccine rollout, which is always fun. But I am very excited to see friends and family around the world able to get their vaccine and being able to go to Universal right now. But yeah, we're stuck in a stay-at-home order for at least almost a month now.
And what's interesting is just this past Thursday, didn't the government announce a travel restriction as well in an effort to shut down the variants, right?
Yeah, they're actually going into a interprovincial travel ban. So they're going to be limiting folks from Ontario going into Quebec and Manitoba and everywhere. It's just one more reason that the variants are basically taking over at this point. But I'm jealous of all of my friends who get to go to WrestleMania and go to the Disney parks and enjoy all of this amazing stuff that we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, and I apologize, folks, if this seems like a somewhat downbeat way to start the show, but trust me, we're going someplace here. Because you guys are dealing with the variant from India and Pakistan, if I remember.
Yeah, and I think we've got a Brazil variant, and I think the Brazil variant actually took out the entire Vancouver Canucks hockey team. So yeah, there's a lot of things, but let's just point this out. I can't go to the mall and buy pants right now. All non-essential retail is completely shuttered, which means that if you need clothing or need something like that, you have to go online, which is great. I almost bought a significant amount from universalorlando.com the other day. There's some really nice Velocicoaster opening hats that I was thinking about.
and in fact, just briefly touch on the Legacy store has opened, and that really looks like a must-see down there.
Absolutely. If I wasn't stuck up here, I'd definitely be heading down there.
Well, honestly, folks, one of the reasons we're hammering so hard on the variant-related news is, of course, the story that's coming out of Japan. And in that, because they're dealing with the UK variant on COVID, they just announced their 3rd state of emergency. They're doing a 2-week-long shutdown there. And what's kind of intriguing about this is that, what is it? Super Nintendo Land only finally officially opened on March 18th. And that's after, in fact, to bring the story full circle here, remember that Super Nintendo Land at the park in Osaka was supposed to open in July of 2020 to cash in on the fact that the Olympics in Tokyo were supposed to be happening in that very same month. And now, here's Japan doing a hard lockdown. They refer to it as it's going to be short and powerful. That's kind of how they used to describe my uncle. But yeah, this 3rd state of emergency will be all the last 2 weeks, but with the hope that they can still do the Summer Olympics in Japan in just 3 months' time. And again, if you think about it, what's supremely ironic about this whole thing is that Universal Studios Hollywood finally, after their Taste of Universal event, reopened to the public on Friday, April 16th. And the reason I know this is that day, I can't tell you the number of photos I get sent from folks who were on the tram tour, who then took pictures of the construction wall for Super Nintendo World, the Hollywood version, which, according to the giant letters on the side of the sign, will open for the summer of 2022. So here's hoping, knocking on a wood table here, But if we're talking about the tram tour in Hollywood, and I know you were watching one of them before we recorded today, Dustin, did you notice when you were watching the tram tour what you don't see anymore?
Yeah, Whoville is gone.
Yeah.
And it was very prominent when you listen to the team members going through their spiel. They're so used to talking about Whoville and the story behind it, and it's not there anymore.
Well, to explain the moment the tour we're talking about, folks, if you've ever done the backstage tour, you do, of course, that loop on Colonial Street, the place where the Munsters house is located, and then, is it Wisteria Lane? Is that where all the houses for Desperate Housewives were supposedly located? I forget. But anyway, you then chug up the hill on your way to the Bates Motel and the Psycho House, and en route, there was this chunk of Whoville that had been built for Ron Howard's holiday 2000 film, the How the Grinch Stole Christmas, with Jim Carrey, famously buried under all that Rick Baker makeup. And it was, the weird thing is they still talk it up on other parts of the tour. They talk about I think at one point when it was in production, it occupied 9 different sound stages. At Universal. It was, one of the biggest fantasy films that had been done in Hollywood since The Wizard of Oz back in '39. But what was kind of intriguing is the sets had all been carved out of styrofoam to get that sort of, that never a straight line Dr. Seuss, unique style. And but here's the thing that so they then looking to create a fun vignette on the tour. They take a chunk of Whoville and they put it out on the hillside again between Colonial Street and the Bates Motel. And in fact, I want to say as part of the Grinchmas celebration every year, when you rolled by there, they'd put 5 and 6 different performers, including somebody in the Grinch outfit, and they do a little musical vignette. So your tram would slow for like a minute. You'd watch the Whovillians sing and dance, and then you'd chug on up the hill, and Norman Bates would come out at you.
I can never remember. Did they get that chance to, like, if you're on the VIP tour, are you able to go? Obviously not anymore, but were you able to go on to the Grinch set? Because I remember seeing everything else that had that. Like you could go out into the square. You could go into the War of the Worlds.
It's so interesting you say that, because again, to circle back to all carved styrofoam. Okay, and think about this, Dustin. You take big chunks of styrofoam and you put them out in the Southern California sun. And does the term structural integrity mean anything to you? In fact, evidently the performers who would work at Grinchmas were actually warned time and time again: do not go into the building, don't lean against the buildings. All it's going to take is a stiff breeze to knock all of this stuff down. And evidently that's ultimately what happened here, was that Universal's own safety people finally went up the hill between Colonial Street and Bates Motel and went, we're not going to get another Christmas out of this. So,
it's time.
It's time. They pulled it down, so it's gone. And let's be honest, in between we did have, the new Illuminations CG Grinch project with Benedict Cumberbatch voicing the character. And
every time you mention Benedict, it just goes through my head how he can't say the word penguin. Did you ever see that?
I had not heard this story.
Oh,
okay.
No, you have to go online and just he did a voiceover for a movie, and it was all about penguins, and he couldn't say the word penguin. He said it penguin. Funniest thing, but then again, Benedict, Academy Award winning actor at this point. He's brilliant. He's Doctor Strange, but just can't say penguin.
Well, it's interesting you say that. We were just doing a story on Marvelous, myself and Aaron Adams, and they were talking about, evidently he may be sporting a new look as Doctor Strange and Doctor Strange 2, the Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. A clean-shaven, Stephen Strange. But I guess it was Rachel Adams who was telling stories about shooting the first film. And the thing is that evidently Benedict is quite the jokester off camera. And the thing is that, they would be doing all this bizarre magic thing, but then when the camera was off, they would just be joking. And the problem is that they'd get laughing so hard, particularly the fake version of the goatee would fall off.
Oh, no.
And it was just one of these things where the makeup people was like, Benedict, please stop telling jokes to Rachel. Please. God, I don't want to keep doing touch-up on you all day.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, so yes, the tram tour loses something. We lose our Whoville. But on the other hand, Universal Studios Hollywood gained something. So did you see the news that broke about the Jurassic World ride?
Yeah, and then I got a chance to see the video. Obviously, once again, if I could travel, I would be down there. I almost got on a plane to go and check out the new store at City Walk. I need to get down to the studios, but I was so jealous of folks who got a chance to go and experience. I guess the real ending for Jurassic World.
Before we forget, though, you picked up on something. So we were pre-gaming about who's being allowed into Universal Studios Hollywood.
Very true. So Universal Studios Hollywood it's in California. There's elements of that state that still are dealing with the COVID lockdowns and such. So we found out from the California Department of Health that visitation to theme parks are currently available to California residents only. So they are assessing the next steps to implement changes to previously released guidance, and we'll share updated information. But they also announced that fully vaccinated people from out of state are now permitted to participate in activities restricted to in-state visitors. So if you've got your card, you're good to go.
Okay, that's Nate said we're just talking about whether or not we need to get these things laminated. So, all right, anyway. We were just talking about, again, the Jurassic World ride, which, remember, was initially changed over from the Jurassic Park ride in June of 2019. And that itself dated back to June of 1996. And, okay, so when it first opened, people were thrilled with that brand new opening scene with the Mosmosaurus, the seemingly in the aquarium. I mean, you're going by these giant flat screen projections, and the Mosmosaurus seems to actually swim under the tunnel you're in, and then it bashes the glass to the point where you're now getting sprayed from a leak from the tank. But as people move through the rest of the ride, it's like, oh, I thought this was supposed to be really updated and
different, and I don't know, storyline. There's things that needed to be there that weren't.
And as it turns out, they kind of rushed to get it in for the June of 2019, and in a weird sort of way, they were able to take advantage of the fact that Universal Studios Hollywood closed, I want to say, on March 14th of last year. So during this period, they went in, and so we now have a brand new animatronic of the Dominus Rex. In fact, to be honest, we have two. In fact, if you watch the video, folk, there's a wonderful little moment just before you begin get on the load hill to begin to climb up to the finale scene. You've got a banner sort of announcing that the Dominus Rex is now in the park. But what's really cool about this moment is behind the banner, and in fact, the only thing that's keeping you from being eaten is the fact that the Dominus Rex seems to be, at least for a moment, tangled in the banner, but the head is pressed against the banner, and it's looking out at you and sniffing at you, and so the notion is they're setting up the story point that this thing is now stalking you, and that it's stalking you up the hill to the place where Owen and his extraction team are going to rescue you. But it's a 55-foot long, 20-foot 2-foot tall predator. It's supposedly one of the most advanced and realistic animatronic figures ever constructed. And more to the point, they've also done some work with the T-Rex at the very top there that's been there since '96. But he's very much now the hero figure. He comes to rescue you. But what's cool is at least the press release, so prepare yourself for the evolution of Jurassic World the ride. As in, it's gotten better over the past 2 years. So you have to go check it out. It supposedly at this point has an unprecedented level of authenticity, and you just escape the Dominus Rex's grasp before you speed down that waterfall. And that opened on Friday, April 16th. The week earlier, however, during the Taste of Universal event, the Secret Life of Pets Off the Leash ride opened up for what they called technical rehearsals, which was somewhat amusing given that this attraction has been ready to open since last year. In fact, they announced it was going to open on March 27th. And then, of course, by order of the Department of Health, Universal Studios Hollywood shut down on the 14th for what was only supposed to be 2 weeks, and then turned out to be, a year? Ugh.
A year and a month later, and I still can't buy pants. I'm just letting you know that it's been a rough year, but can you imagine if you're in that marketing team and you're getting all of your media from across the country and the world, going to that one location to see Secret Life Off the Pets, and it's ready to go. And they've done all the timing, they've done all the hiring, everything is ready to go. And then the world comes crashing down.
That's got to have been frustrating. But at the same time, they've got to be pleased with the reaction they've got. Absolutely. That since the ride got up and running as part of the Taste of Universal event. Secret Life of Pets Off the Leash has been almost universally praised as a very cute, fun family dark ride. I want to say it has 64 animated figures, which is evidently a record for Universal. Mind you, if we're using the Disney yardstick here, the Pirates of the Caribbean at Disneyland, which opened in '67, that has 120 figures. So if we're being completely fair here, a lot of those are chickens. All right, just saying, pigs and dogs. So Secret Life of Pets, it's got the dogs and pigs and all right, never mind.
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing, but not really. But yeah, I don't know. After watching it looks great. It looks fun. It looks like a solid dark ride, and not a lot of screens.
But not entirely screen free. In fact, one of the funnier running gags of the thing is as you're making your way through the queue, which by the way has animatronic figures in it. But at various points you run into Norman the guinea pig, who was introduced in the first Secret Life Pet film from 2016, and it was back for the sequel in 2019. But you see him up in the vents, and he actually, he's chatting with you about how he's still trying to find his apartment. And by the way, if we're talking about screens, of course, we have Fast and Furious Supercharged, the scene that was added to the Universal Tram Tour, part of the 50th anniversary. It became the new finale of that ride back in June of 2015, and then it became a standalone attraction at Universal Studios Florida back in April of 2018. And I think, Dustin, you would agree, not entirely successful.
If I remember correctly, we're allowed to say that it's I'm trying to remember the right phrasing. It's an attraction. It's there. I think it's where you go if you want to look at Harry Potter. And then you walk to Harry Potter and you look back and you say, wow, that was a really interesting walk. And you've experienced Supercharge Me.
All right.
No, I went on it. It's there.
It's a mixed success. All right. It has a very immersive queue, and
I love the store. I will give it that.
All right.
Store.
We are trying to pick over the corpse here, folks. All right. But to contrast, the Fast and Furious film series is one of the most successful franchises in Hollywood history. And more to the point, it is finally returning to theaters June 25th of this year. And did you see the event that Universal Pictures has put together to sort of prime the pump for F9?
I remember seeing some of those trilogy films where they would have you go. I believe Toy Story 4 did it, where you would be able to go and see the first three, I believe, the day before, and then you could go back and watch it, so you're right in the middle of it. It looks like what they're doing with Fast and the Furious is that type of an event where you're revisiting the characters and the experiences, so you're able to jump into F9 with a full knowledge of what's going on in that world, right?
Well, yes, but in a very, but remember also we're dealing with, theater chains around the country that have been running at very low capacity for months and desperate to get folks back. And so what's interesting is Universal Pictures is partnering with these theaters to do an 8-week long stunt. In fact, starting this coming Friday, April 30th, the very first, The Fast and the Furious from 2001, will debut in theater. And then every Friday after that, a different, in chronological order, a different Fast and the Furious film will be screened. They're starting with 500 theaters here in North America, and eventually that number will grow to over 900. Very interesting aspect in that both Universal and these theaters are presenting these movies for free. All right, so it's like, mind you, I understand you have to go online, arrange for your ticket, but you can go and for 8 weeks in a row watch Fast and Furious films. Of course, this is a movie theater, so I'm sure the theaters will make out like bandits on popcorn and soda sales, but and all of this marching toward F9 debuting in theaters on June 25th of this year. But I think this is a very smart way to build interest in F9. More to the point, given it that this is still a time when people are somewhat hesitant about going back into theaters, and it's like, well, how about free? Do you like the price of free?
But it's interesting that you're saying that that Universal is partnering with the exhibitors and the theaters, because that's something that we haven't seen a lot of. Especially with folks like Universal with their Peacock and with Disney and Disney Plus. There's been a lot of conversation over the last year of where the Cineplexes of the world and where the movie theaters of the world are going to fit in a post-pandemic world, besides being a very large auditorium for them to sell out to, schools and universities or esports. So it's a very interesting thing that they're doing it, but that's just a great idea from the folks at Universal.
No. They're very smart people there, and to engender goodwill with the exhibitors, equally smart. But again, it isn't like they haven't done smart things before. Like April 13th of this year, we got news about the Universal Parks and Resorts. They've selected a developer for that 20-acre affordable housing community that they're building. This is supposed to be built near the International Drive corridor, not all that terribly far from where they're building their fourth theme park, Epic Universe. And when this, they're supposed to start construction in late 2022. When completed, this affordable housing community will include 1,000 high-quality apartments, as well as 16,000 square feet of retail, But like I said, a very smart move, on Universal's part when it comes to engendering goodwill in Orange County. By the way, folks, Dustin and I will be trying to engender a little goodwill of our own. When we get back from break, we're going to read you some listener mail. So we'll be right back.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. It's Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and LifeLock has tips to protect your identity. Use strong passwords, set up multi-factor authentication, report phishing, and update the software on your devices. And for comprehensive identity protection, let LifeLock alert you to suspicious uses of your personal information. LifeLock also fixes identity theft, guaranteed or your money back. Stay smart, safe, and protected with a 30-day free trial at LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
Optimism isn't sunshine and rainbows. It's fixing things, changing the way we fix things. It's running the world on smarter energy. Because if optimism never stops, then change can't either. GE Vernova, the energy of change.
This podcast is brought to you by Carvana. Carvana lets you buy your next car on your terms. Explore a massive inventory online, filter for what matters, and find your perfect match. Then choose delivery to your home or pick it up at one of Carvana's iconic car vending machines. Every car also comes with a 7-day money-back guarantee, so you can make sure it's the right fit. Buy your car on Carvana. Delivery or pickup fees may apply. Limitations and exclusions may apply. See our 7-day return policy at Carvana.com.
Carvana.
You're back. Okay, another quick bit of Universal Orlando related news before we get to that piece of listener mail. Did you see where we now have an opening date for Lowe's Sapphire Falls Hotel?
Yeah, it looks like they're coming back on May 18th, which is incredibly good news for folks who love staying at Universal Orlando and staying on property. The folks at Lowe's Sapphire Falls, they need to come back. All the hospitality in that area just needs some love, and I'm very excited to see what's going to end up happening at Sapphire Falls, because they're going to have to, make a big splash to get people excited.
Well, I guess what is intriguing for me, given that they do share some back of house stuff with the Aventura, I'm kind of intrigued that we've got a date for the opening of the Sapphire Falls, but nothing yet for Aventura. Likewise, I've been dying to get to the Endless Summer Surfside Inn Suites, and just because it's supposed to be the best priced, most modern value resort in all of Central Florida. But again, that one's still doesn't have an opening date. So and you have to assume, given the Velocicoaster, we got a June 10th opening now for that. You got to assume at some point we're gonna find out about where Aventura and Surfside fits into all that.
Now we do have news though about the pass holder preview that's coming from Universal. So once again, like any Universal annual pass holder preview, you have to go online. But previews are open for select times from Sunday, May the 2nd through Wednesday, May the 5th. Reservations are limited and there will not be a standby line. So once again, you have to go on to the Universal exclusive, or the Universal Orlando pass holder exclusive website. They're doing limited capacity, but it's going to be incredible to be able to go into this. Just stop onto the website, and if it is closed or if they're at capacity, just keep checking back. You never know what'll happen.
Well, and don't get me wrong, I love that they're doing that, but at the same time, I found it very amusing that within a day or so of when Universal announced that, okay, here's the official opening date for Velocicoaster at Islands Adventure, Disney felt the need to go, by the way, did you notice that we are opening the Adventures Campus in Anaheim a week earlier, on June 4th.
Literally 2 days later, so April 6th it happened at Universal's talking about Velocicoaster, and April 8th over on Marvel.com it shows up and they're like, hey, by the way. I love that. Like, you could just imagine being in that conversation, that Zoom call, being like, okay, so we have this ready, but as soon as they mention anything about Velocicoaster, just press send.
I mean, it just, again, it just, for me, it's amazing that even at this late date, Universal and Disney are still locked in Mortal Kombat. They are so competitive. And which brings us actually to our listener letter. Danny from the Netherlands writes, Dear Jim, I listen to your podcast for hours. Thanks so much for the great entertainment. I'm living in the Netherlands and I'm a big fan. So I have a few questions I would like to ask you and Dustin. Universal Orlando seems to have a lot of old, not used ride and show buildings in the park. The whole Barney area, the old theater at Toon Lagoon, as well as the Lost Continent area, with of course the stunt show. And it's like, why do they still have the need to build a new theme park when they have so much weird empty space in the park? He asks, what's the future of Poseidon's Fury? Like most of the effect shows, they seem to have aged. That's how we lost Disaster, Twister, and in Europe, Temple del Fuego. That's at Port Aventura, built by Universal. He's right. That's a great story. We should look at that. And so what's the future of these kinds of experiences and expensive shows? Because they cost so much money to operate. But what you can do with these massive buildings. And very curious to your opinions. And again, greetings from the Netherlands, Danny. Well, Danny, the interesting thing is when you look at these empty show buildings, when you look at Toon Lagoon, or for that matter, you look at the Barney area, you have to, I mean, again, it's like, well, what's Universal Parks and Resorts going to do with those? And it's like, well, okay, here's the thing. You have to sort of take a step up. You have to look a few pay grades up to Comcast. And you got to remember back in December of 2009, Comcast acquires NBC Universal for $13.75 billion. It actually, and it was such an expensive deal. It took Comcast till January 2011 to complete the deal. And even then, Comcast wasn't able to take full control of NBC Universal till March of 2013. Now, I particularly draw your attention to the gentleman who's the chairman of NBC Universal. He's a senior executive vice president at Comcast. Name is Stephen B. Burke. And Stephen is former Disney. Okay, to be specific, January of 1986, Burke joins the Walt Disney Company. He comes over from having a senior executive position at General Foods. He's somebody that Michael Eisner and Frank Wells personally seek out. He's a go-getter. In fact, it says a lot about the guy, what Eisner and Wells thought about him, that from 1992 to 1996, Burke was the president and chief operating officer of Euro Disney. And those of you who know the history of Euro Disney, that was right after the park hit the iceberg. They were supposed to get, 12? They were projected to do $12 million or 12 million people for attendance for the first year. Only got 7. And they weren't meeting their financials, they weren't meeting their attendance goals, and Burke was the one who righted the ship. He worked with Frank Wells to help, renegotiate deals with the consortium of bankers who'd paid for that, $3 billion project. And in fact, it says so much about, what Eisner and company thought of Burke that Disney buys Cap City, ABC, the television network, in 1995. $20 billion acquisition. And who do they put in charge of it in 1996? Butsy Burke. He's the executive vice president of ABC, and the following year they make him president of ABC Broadcasting. So, this is but the interesting thing is in 1998, Burke basically sees that, there's a ceiling here, and that my career path, the job I want is Michael Eisner's. And, I don't think Michael's given up the job.
Yeah, Michael's not going anywhere anytime soon. That's crazy talk.
Yeah, but the interesting thing is that also at this point, Burke has spent enough time working in, terrestrial broadcast television to sort of see the future, what's going on in cable and that sort of thing. So he gets the opportunity. He becomes to get hired by Comcast. So he ends up as president of Comcast Cable. But here's the thing: he still loves Disney. He still loves the theme park business. So we jump ahead 5 years, and we have Michael Eisner in his toughest position during his tenure at Disney. This is when Roy Disney has left the company. He's launched the Save Disney movement. Eisner is getting hammered, by shareholders. And out of the blue, February of 2008, in the middle of that debacle, Comcast makes a surprise, unsolicited offer to buy the Walt Disney Company. It's Burke who's pushing this project. They want to buy Disney for $54 billion.
Wow.
And Eisner's like, go away. I don't need this right now. I got to take care of Roy. Don't do this to me. So April 29th of that same year, Comcast pulls the Disney bid off the table. But they, again, this is a guy who still loves the theme park business. And meanwhile, to pivot to Universal, as we step into the mid 1990s or to mid 2000s, things start to get really interesting at Universal. First in May of 2007, Universal announces that it has the theme park rights to Harry Potter, and let's remember that the Disney had those first, and managed to tick off J.K. Rowling. So those rights walked out the door with her.
Not even tick her off. They completely mishandled that. Imagine that, the butterbeer sales. That just went down. Because that Disney came to JK and was like, hey, so here's what we're going to do with butterbeer. It's going to be a mix of Beverly and something else that, we'll package it, we'll stick a Disney label on it, and all will be great. And JK's like, or we can do butterbeer the way that it's supposed to. And we're just like, no, we know how to do this.
I mean, again, it's supremely ironic. Just today, somebody was showing a photo of the queue at Galaxy's Edge for the blue milk, and there was no one in line. Again, you're right. Disney had the option of having Potter in the parks and having
they were just going to give her an attraction. It wasn't even going to be a full-fledged land like Avatar.
No,
so
it's not a great story. No. But anyway, May of 2008, we have the Simpson ride open at Universal Studios Florida and Hollywood, and then we jump ahead. We have June of 2010. The very first Wizarding World opens up. Now, mind you, remember, back in November of December of 2009, this is when Comcast, announces its plans to acquire NBC Universal. And there is this famous story of, the deal is still going on. And remember, it took till 2011 to actually, complete the deal. And then 2013, they don't get full control till then. But here's Steve Burke in his position, finally in the late summer of 2010. They've reached the stage where they can finally get into the books at the Universal parks. And Burke's like, are you kidding me? You guys recovered the entire $150 million construction cost for the original Wizarding World in 5 months? And you did it all on the back of butterbeer? And it's like, absolutely. And it's just one of these things where it's like, okay, let me say this. As soon as we complete this year, we're getting into the Harry Potter business. And they did. We saw it, but more to the point, he saw what you could do on the back of theme park food. So June of 2013, we have Fast Food Boulevard. We see the expansion of Simpsons Land at Universal Studios Florida, and that's where we get Moe's, and that's where we
Moe's Tavern,
and
the
Duff,
Krusty Burger,
and Duff, and you can get your very own Flaming Moe. And then July of 2014, we have our Wizarding World of Harry Potter opens at Universal Studios Japan. May of 2015, we have the supersized version of Fast Food Boulevard. Springfield, USA opens at Universal Studios Hollywood. And then the very next year, right next door to it, we get the Wizarding World of Harry Potter opens at Universal Studios Hollywood. And then just 3 months after that, we get the Wizarding World Diagon Alley opens at Universal Studios, Florida. And but here's the thing, again, as enthusiastic as Steve Burke was about, oh my God, look at the money we're making off of, Potter, and now look at The Simpsons. There's still the fact that they're licensing these characters. They're licensing these IPs. Simpsons is from Fox, and obviously, the Harry Potter is from Warner Brothers. And in this same window of time, remember, April of 2016, July of 2016, NBC Universal buys DreamWorks Animation. They pay $3.8 billion, but they get access to that library of characters. And it's what's interesting in this window of time is supposedly Burke sits down with the folks at the NBC, the Universal Parks and Resorts, and it's the effect of, okay, it's time now, especially since we just paid $3.8 billion for DreamWorks, to start making, more of our library of stuff, our library of characters. And really, if you think about it, Dustin, it's not a coincidence that in that same 5-year period of time, we've seen things like, for example, the Terminator 2 3D attraction at Universal Studios becomes the Bourne, a Bourne Stuntacular, because again, Universal owns the Bourne thing. Likewise, if we look at Epic Universe, for example, the info we have to date, that park is going to include a Universal Classic Monsters Land, or for that matter, a How to Train Your Dragon Land. And again, these are two properties that are owned outright by Universal. Now, conversely, we have something like A Day in the Park with Barney. That has always been a licensing deal. Since that attraction first opened, July of 1995, that was, Universal reaching out and cutting a deal with the folks who made the Barney television show. And so, to answer Danny's questions, if you look at things like Toon Lagoon, which is filled with, licensing deals, so many of the King Features cartoon strips or that sort of thing, Universal cut the deals for. And it's one of these things where it's like, okay, so we'd like to do this in-house, and what do we have that we could do in-house? And to sort of bring this full circle, sometimes that doesn't necessarily work. The Fast and Furious Supercharged ride, again, a hugely successful series of films for Universal Pictures, not necessarily a successful attraction for the parks.
Now, is that because of the attraction, or is that because of the brand? I think that if they were to do something like Cars Land with Radiator Springs, where you're actually racing cars, that'd be different than if you basically just brought over part of a studio tour and call it its own attraction.
I don't honestly know what to tell you about that. I do think it's significant that the Beijing park, which is supposed to open, later this year? Did, when it was initially announced, have a Fast and the Furious attraction that fell off the table. And I'm told it was largely because of the reaction to the standalone version of Fast and Furious Supercharged. It's like, ooh, let's not do that. But further complicating the situation, obviously, is the fact that March of 2019, the Walt Disney Company buys Fox for $71.3 billion. And, one of the real cherries there, one of the real jewels in the crown of the Fox acquisition has been The Simpsons.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of folks at Universal Creative who are kind of eyeballing the terms of that contract, and it's just sort of like, ooh, we probably do need to be ready, because this is not like the Marvel deal, that the licensing deal that was cut way back when. This one actually has some solid exit dates and some thresholds. And it's like, when you think about the amount of territory that The Simpsons takes up in Hollywood, or for that matter, the land that it occupies at Universal Studios Florida. I mean, mind you, we're still at least 10 or 15 years out before, that deal goes into twilight. But at the same time, if you look at what Warner Brothers is doing with Harry Potter, for example, we've got that flagship store that's going to be opening in New York City in the Flatiron District in June of this year. And I don't know if you saw where they are building effectively a clone of that Harry Potter studio tour from that's at Leavesden Studio in the UK. They're building one of those in Japan. And when it comes to Warner's, they've got their own agenda going when it comes to Potter. And yes, anybody who's looked at the Epic Universe plans knows that there's some sort of Harry Potter element to that park, but at the same time, let's be honest, this is the land that is most hidden under a fireworks display, which, I think the story you and I have both heard was that this was going to be the Fantastic Beasts land, and then the Fantastic Beasts films weren't doing the business the original Harry Potter films were doing, and now near everything I'm hearing is Universal Creative is revisiting that idea, and now we're reverting to Harry Potter classic, the first 8 films, and this may be the Ministry of Magic, but that's probably a story for another show. But again, long story short, Danny, what you're looking at, why a lot of these things are being held in reserve, is that there is this discussion coming down from Comcast to the Universal Parks to the effect of, we want IP that we own and control in the parks. And and especially when you look at the Universal Parks, it's not the Disney situation. They don't have 43 square miles of land. They have, I want to say, it's 874 acres, I want to say, is the main campus. And then, there's, of course, what will be built up at Epic, the Epic Universe site. But yeah, that because there is such a limit on real estate, Universal thinks long and hard about it. And also, especially on the heels of what happened with Fast and Furious Supercharged, when you bet wrong, and you spend tens of millions of dollars building a ride that people aren't really that excited about, it gives you pause when you're looking to spend the next 10 million or some odd dollars on attractions. So just going to be interesting to watch over the next 10 years or so as a number of these deals twilight, to see what comes into the parks. But yeah,
definitely watch the dominoes because at the end of the day, Universal has they have IP to play with, and you're also going to see some interesting moves. We've heard for such a long time about Men in Black getting a refurbishment. The fact that it's still referencing the first movie, and there's been multiple iterations with completely different casts all the way through that. You have Fear Factor right there. Like, there's a lot of IPs and a lot of buildings that have been in our shows in the past talking about different rumors and different ideas.
Well, and again, to sort of nail this home, and don't get me wrong, I love Men in Black Alien Attack. In fact, I want to say that recently celebrated an anniversary. In fact, the gentleman who was in charge of creation of that attraction, Dave Cobb, was actually at the park, and it was nice to see the fans, feting him, so to speak.
I just remember you and I, we were in cars just like separate, and on our Universal Joint podcast with Storybook Destinations, and oh my goodness, your car beat me, and I was just like, how is this possible? And then I looked, you had ringers the entire time.
I was traveling with people who actually had hand-eye coordination. I don't. Anyway, but remember, that's the thing of Alien, Men in Black Alien Attack. That's still, that's an IP that they license. That's from Sony. And, that's one deal I hope never goes south, but anyway, so, all right. Hopefully, Danny, that answers your question. But more to the point, thank you for bringing up Port Aventura. Always been a fascination of mine. In fact, let me see if I can work up a feature about that for the next show. Because, again, that should have been Universal's answer to Euro Disney and why that went south. In fact, the sort of tease the story, this was another Steve Burke situation. There was a gentleman who was former Disney who was in charge of that project and fought very hard for it. And again, it was one of these, financials, the folks who were a couple of pay grades up making decisions that the people at Universal Parks didn't necessarily agree on. But again, we'll get that to the next show. In the meantime, Dustin, if folks are looking for things to do before we get a new Universal Joint out the door, where can they find you online and what are you up to?
So I'm over at stepstomagic.com. Doing a few rewrites of some articles that were highly successful in the past that I'm trying to bring into 2021 with the lack of ability to get down there. Tempted to just hire photographers to go through and be like, tell me how the butterbeer actually tastes. But yeah, I'm over at Steps to Magic on Instagram and over here at Universal Joint Podcast.
Okay. Well, again, hopefully you're enjoying this show, but if you're looking for other stuff to listen to, we of course have The Mothership, Disney Dish with Len Testa. We have Marvel Us Disney, which I do with Aaron Adams, the gentleman who edits a lot of the podcasts here. Let's see, we have Fine Tuning with Drew Taylor. We just got another one of those in the hopper. I am going to be finally recording a brand new Looking at Lucasfilm later this week. And then on the heels of that, we're going to be doing a new I Want That will be keying off a pretty big chunk of news, which I can't talk about yet. So, anyway, tell you what, folks. If you could do Dustin and I a favor, if you could head over to Apple Podcasts and rate and review the Universal Jump podcast, that would be very helpful. On the other hand, if you really, really, really like what you heard here, if you want to head over to Bandcamp and subscribe, that'll help pay for Dustin ordering things from the Universal Legacy store. Let's see, social media wise, Dustin, where can they find you social media wise?
At Dustin Fuhs, at Steps to Magic, across the board. Okay.
Well, Nancy tells me you can find us on Twitter and Instagram as Jim Hill Media, and on Facebook as Jim Hill Media News. Anyway, folks, that's going to do it for now. Dustin and I will be back in 2 weeks with a brand new Universal Joint. So thanks for listening, and we will be back soon.